I make my boss happy with my loyalty. You know how? I never charge him for breakfast ever because I have the lounge in the hotel most of the time.
I, for some reason, thought that if you didn't go with the bank's the travel portal and you bought the ticket separately using that same credit card, you won't get that 5 times or whatever. Is that true? No.
I've had situations where like you get stuck next to like someone who stinks. I mean, what are you going to do, right? Like, but the worst thing is like if you're stuck next to a person like that on a long haul flight, right?
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Our Tech Chronicles. Today's topic is going to be so beneficial for me. We're going to discuss business travel hacks for dummies. We will be covering the preparation work, pre travel, all the things you need to do, and then we'll learn from these two experts, various travel hacks while you are on your journey. Basically, the idea is we want to learn how we can the work travel that we do can benefit our personal travel goals. Over to you guys.
Awesome. So let me add a bit more context to that intro. What we are going to talk about would, in some cases, or in sometimes even in most cases, would apply for US based travel because some of the real life examples and experiences both Sean and I have are like while we travel for work within US, and some of it applies to international travel too. So that's one. Some of the names or brands we might use might be only well known like within the US space, like airlines, hotels, kinds of things. But I think idea is to kind of use those experiences in your context to kind of see how you can benefit out of it. And again, like the idea is that we will talk mostly about like work travel related stories and stay within that context that is always applicable for personal travel too.
Good. I'm taking notes.
And just to add to that, before I came to know all about these hacks, I was just booking all the flights that I could find that gets me from point A to point B, didn't really care about the hotel I was staying. But later on, I realized so much reward and money or points that I'm leaving behind with such bookings. But if we thought about it, if we put a little bit of planning on those travels, they can really benefit you in an ethical way to plan your own travels with your family, take them on a vacation. So we'll unpack some of those.
All right, let's get started.
So maybe I'll go first. High level, we are talking about loyalty programs in general. There are hotel loyalty programs, airlines, and some credit cards provide their own point structure that can be transferred to these hotels and airlines. But before I begin, I need to put a disclaimer like if you don't trust yourself with indulging in spending and rolling month over month on payment, this is not for you. So be careful about that. But if you're a pretty good planner, so basically it requires aligning your planning to a specific loyalty program to maximize your chances of reward. So that means in US we have three different major players. That is Marriott, Hilton, and IHG maybe. Yeah. So if you're staying in Marriott and be loyal, and no pun intended, that's the whole point of the program is to basically make you loyal to a specific chain of hotels so that they can treat you well and keep you happy. So you just have to pick which direction you want to go. And then next time when there is a corporate travel coming along the way, and remember to put in your loyalty number so that you will also earn points through those stays. And same goes to the airlines, but the airlines become a little bit tricky because their points expire. So you need to think about how to redeem them soon.
So I have a question. So by staying loyal to a hotel chain, what like can you describe some of the rewards that you get out of that?
I can talk to that a little bit. Before I get to that, let me elaborate a bit more like on like what Sean was saying too, right? Like so yeah, sticking to like a hotel chain, like a brand chain, gives you the flexibility to, if you take like Marriott, for example, Marriott has like so many types of hotels, right? From star rating to like brands as well. So in any city you go, you have a variety of hotel brands within the Marriott chain, right? So regardless of where you stay, your points are based on the dollar amount that you're spending so that you get that flexibility. That also gives you like some level of flexibility when you do like business travel with a team. Then to Sean's point, like you would always like use your rewards number to book it, and wherever you are staying, you are getting these reward points, and then you can use those points for your personal travel later.
And also to add to that, Roshan's question, by sticking to one chain of hotels, in addition to earning points, you will also collect something called elite nights or stayed number of nights. The more you collect, the chances of upgrading your status for the
Exactly.
following year is higher. So then imagine, let's say you are traveling, 20 days or 30 days or whole year. Sometimes they even run promotions. Like during this period, if you stayed, your nights will be doubled. So you can
Right.
easily get to that threshold
Yeah.
and then enjoy that status the whole next year with your
Right.
family. Yeah.
Right. And just to keep adding to that, right, you might get higher rewards earnings. You will most likely to get upgraded most of the time. It's not a guarantee. There are other benefits like if there are like longer check-in, check-out lines, there are priority lines, so to speak, where it might be a shorter line. Also, there are lounge accesses like within the hotel, right? Like so there might be club level lounge which actually has free meals, free snacks. So based on your loyalty status, you'll have access to these. Again, everything is subject to availability and depending on your hotel. So there's different levels of benefits by being loyal. I mean, that is the whole point, right? It's called a loyalty program because of that. Just one more thing to add, like one of the previous companies I used to work for did not have the hotel brands I used to like as one of the preferred ones. So at that point, you have a choice. I mean, if you are still able to negotiate and stay within your brand, you can. But like I have switched to like other brands for a brief period of time. Like you, like within that duration, like you're also like other larger brands or like rather like larger chains, I would say. So you kind of get the same benefits, but like it's kind of you had to kind of figure out like what works best given the circumstances, I guess.
I think I also remember you telling me once that based on your status at Marriott, you had your own personal concierge. I think
Right.
for one
Yeah.
week, right? That yeah.
Yeah, that was actually pretty cool. Like the top tier, they kind of ended that during COVID time. So yeah, we used to have like my own customer service person, so to speak. You can email them, you can call them. They kind of act as like your travel planner, kind of a thing. So there are like a lot of those types of benefits. So we talked quite a lot about the hotel side. Like the airlines have like the same situation. But to Sean's point earlier, airlines can get a bit more complicated because airlines also have this concept of like an airline alliance, right? Like it's not necessarily like a chain at that point. So the alliances, the US has like three big alliances, I think, or more than that, but I think the three biggest ones are Star Alliance, One World, and
Mm.
Sky.
Yeah.
Sky, there you go, right? Like so if you stick to those one of the alliance, so I typically try to stay within one alliance. But I have in the past, like I when I used to work for one of the big fours, I used to maintain the top tier status of two different alliances, right? Like so that gave me like a huge variety of like airline choices depending on where I travel. Because at the time, like I used to do like a lot of international travel too, and depending on where you travel, like different countries are stronger on one alliance, right? Like so, for example, like if you are flying through like Central Europe, mostly around like Germany or like the surrounding area, like Star Alliance is strong because Lufthansa is a huge airline, right? Like and Lufthansa is part of Star. Or with One World, you have benefits for us whenever we fly to like Sri Lanka or like that part, you can leverage Qatar Airways as like as one of the One World airlines while you are doing your business travel within that alliance, right?
I think we talked about the hotel and the airline from a usage point of view. I wanted to also point out that some companies don't allow personal cards to be used for travel booking, right? In that case, don't fret because there is still ways to earn points because usually the companies who have corporate cards, they also have travel booking sites. where they usually, I think most of the time, I've never seen a company that doesn't accept loyalty numbers from employees. So make sure you create a loyalty program membership. It's free before you travel to plug in those numbers in those systems so you could start earning points. But for those companies that allow personal cards to be used and you can reimburse after, there's a whole lot of benefit that
Right.
way. I think you can probably go into that
Yeah.
much more
So
detail.
it's kind of covering from multiple angles, but to maximize on the rewards, right? So loyalty points is a given, right? Any airline you're going with. So again, with the loyalty points, if you are using an alliance, try to use that number for everything, right? I have like an American Airlines number. Anytime I use One World airline, I always use my American Airlines number. So even if I fly Qatar, British Airways, I always use my American Airlines numbers. All my rewards points come to that one number. Because if you use those individual numbers, your points are getting scattered, right?
Mm.
And you won't have enough points to kind of redeem because it takes a while like to kind of accumulate these things. And to Sean's point, if you have the flexibility during your business travel, like to use your own personal credit card, you'll have to do some research like what works best. Some airlines have their own credit cards. Using American Airlines as an example, American Airlines has their own credit card. United has their own credit card, and also there are like these independent travel cards, right? Chase has a very popular travel card called Chase Sapphire. Capital One has their own thing. Like few of these banks have travel cards. So kind of do some research to kind of see, depending on your situation, what works better for you, right? Because I personally try to stay within like a regular travel card, so I can repurpose those points for like various things. And also in situations I have had like where the company had restrictions that I cannot use my personal credit cards for like hotels. Like airlines are mostly done through like a portal because sometimes hotels you have to use a credit card and you are forced to use the company a business credit card like your company has provided, right? One of the times there was a part of that credit card, I think it was an American Express, like an Amex card. They had like a membership program that you can buy on top, right? So I used to buy that like for $100 for the whole year. Using that, like you get points. And those points are yours because since you have paid for the membership, you can redeem those points. So you have to kind of figure out what works for you in that situation. Sometimes there's no one template that you can always follow. Just do some research when you join a new company or like getting ready to travel kind of thing as part of like prep work. You can do a bit of research to kind of figure out what works best.
Couple of myths that I wanted to bust here when it comes to, points and miles. One is points are always cash back that you wanted to transfer to cash. That's definitely not the best use of your points because there's tons of travel partners. Every time you transfer to a travel partner, to Yuresh's point, like if you're transferring it to an alliance and booking a flight, like if you're looking for a British Airways and you're transferring to the alliance, you can actually use Qatar Airways book the same flight, which will be much less costly than BA.
Really?
Yeah, and so it's all the hack is all about like finding the alliance and finding the transfers. You can't do all that if you have a co-branded credit card. I think that's what Yuresh was talking about. If you go ahead and find, hey, there's a huge bonus for Delta credit card. I'm gonna fly Delta, so therefore I should go with Delta. That's not always the case. If you go with one of those vanilla cards, like Yuresh was saying, you actually get 5 times the point. But then when you transfer out, you get the flexibility to transfer anywhere you want. Like Delta, you're kind of stuck with Delta. And the second myth I really wanted to get to is if you only have one great card, that is suitable for all spending. That's another myth we need to bust because if you go with the best card you have, like Sapphire Reserve, that's really bad card to use on your daily spend, like groceries and other things, because they only give you 1 point per
Right.
dollar.
So what now this is learning for me. So what should you do then for like everyday use, like groceries and whatnot?
You should find like a card that rewards you most for like restaurant points or like groceries, right? Like, so because for some situations cash back is better,
Hmm.
but to Sean's point, like for travel, like the multipliers are the best, right? Like so, if you are getting for every dollar you spend like 5 points only on travel specific things. So I'll give you a good example. This is not necessarily work related, but for Uber, I use two different credit cards. When I use for Uber Eats, I use one credit card that's better for restaurants, for Uber rides rather. I use a travel specific card because I get like higher rewards. So I have like both cards registered on my Uber app and I switch between those two cards depending on what I'm booking.
Mm.
I didn't know that. That's a pretty detailed one, Yuresh. And Roshan, to answer your question, like for example, every bank has a three-tier system. So the lowest one is the freedom cards they have. Those things basically earn you up to 3 to 5 times the points. I'm saying times because sometimes if you have cash back, you get 5% back. But if you convert to point, if you have a higher card with them, it turns into points. So you get 3 to 5 times points from that lowest card, and then they have a middle one called preferred, sapphire preferred. Then you get certain benefits out of it, and the highest is the reserve card. Reserve card comes with so many other benefits, and it's extremely expensive with lounge access and all that. But do not use the same card for everything. I mean, if you for convenience, if you want to use it, that's fine, but you're not getting the best
Yeah.
earning out of them.
Since we are kind of talking about the rewards part, also with these cards, it also has the option to book travel, right? So that is not not a good way to do that. You should always try to look to transfer these points out to a specific airline and then book through that airline. Because if you use the bank's travel portal, they'll try to maximize like your points for like that travel. Like if you book the same itinerary through like the airline, it would only might cost you like half of that amount kind of thing. So you have to do like a bit of research to before you do this.
Okay, these
Yeah,
are
okay.
all these things you guys are talking about are mistakes that I'm making. Seriously. I for some reason thought that if you didn't go with the bank's the travel portal and you bought the ticket separately using that same credit card, you won't get that 5 times or whatever. Is that true? No,
No.
nothing. I see.
You'll
Yeah.
definitely get.
Hmm.
But
Right.
they will reward you, try to entice you to use the
Sure.
portal by giving you bonus. Like
Right.
sometimes they say, "Oh, if you go through this portal, you'll get 50% more point value when you book it." But they
Yes.
know that if you transfer that points to another airline
Yeah.
partner, you probably get a better
Right.
reward.
And also there's like ethical hacks. Let's say you have a generic travel card. So going back to my early example, I fly American Airlines most of the time or like one world, right? So I'm using my Chase Sapphire to book my travel, but American Airlines credit card might have like an offer saying that like, hey, if you sign up, like you'll get like 80,000 points, but you have to spend up to like 2,000, $3,000, whatever that those terms are. So you can still kind of sign up for that, like only use it up to that point, earn the points, keep the card aside, and then continue to use your other card, right? It's these are not illegal things that we are promoting, right? These are totally valid things. It's like ethically how to use this for your benefit, right?
Got it. Okay.
Since we are kind of talking about like the ethical point, like we'll let me kind of mention one more thing from a business point of view, right? It goes without saying, like don't try to rig the system when it comes to business travel, right? Because easily like you'll get into trouble because these things are tracked by companies. The other thing, you are actually making it worse for the next person too, right? Because the more you try to rig it, more restrictions will be imposed, and everyone is going to lose the benefits based on that.
Not that same ethical use point. I make my boss happy with my loyalty. You know how? I never charge him for breakfast ever because I have the lounge in the hotel most of the time. I don't grab any sandwich or anything, and when I come back to the hotel, I go to have supper. It's all part of the lounge. So from my manager's point of view, like I'm extremely cheap when I travel, and thanks to the loyalty program.
Hey everyone, if you enjoy listening to these types of topics, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, we would love to hear your stories around travel hacks, business travel hacks, any kind of things that we may not have covered, or even like nightmare stories that you want to contribute to. So I think we talked quite a lot about the reward side of things, both from hotel and airlines. Maybe let's talk about some of the other travel preparations before travel.
How about
Um,
packing?
yeah, I can start. So when it comes to business travel, I prefer to travel light. Basically, just a carry-on and maybe your backpack for your laptop and or whatever the other things, right? You always used to do that because at one point I used to travel like every week on work. All of that adds to a lot of time. It consumes a lot of time just for the travel portion. So I used to find ways to minimize on the time consumption part, right? If you are checking in bags every time, there's a cutoff time, so you have to go to the airport before that window closes so that you can actually drop off your bag. And also on the other end, you have to wait for your bag at the baggage carousel. So using a carry-on helps. What I've also done is my carry-on was expandable. So just in case while you travel, like if you end up doing some shopping, if you get some additional things to bring back, you can always expand and then check in the bag as a one-off thing. Try to kind of figure out like the configuration, what you need to pack. Obviously, travel size, type of toiletries, because sometimes toiletries will add up to a big amount. That also adds to like the weight, although the weight really doesn't matter for domestic travel. But for international travel, weight matters even for carry-on, because you guys know some of the airlines during international travel, the first thing they weigh is your carry-on, even before they weigh your main luggage, right? For domestic US travel, like the weight doesn't matter. Like
I have nothing to comment about packing because I'm horrible at that. So Yuresh is the
well,
master packing.
I'm a last minute packer anyway. And also once you have like a routine, you kind of figure out things. At one point, I used to travel to San Francisco all the time. So since I was going there every week, I once took extra set of shirts and pants, and I used to keep them at the hotel. So I found a laundry around there. So I'm not hauling my clothes every week. Also, like I used to have like a different go bag with my toiletries and everything. I used to leave them at the hotel, because you can do that if you are traveling on a weekly basis, or even every other week they will hold it for a couple of weeks without much issues. You have to kind of find better ways to make things easier for you. From a travel preparation point of view, we already covered around how to kind of figure out your airlines and hotels and what to pack. Whatever you can get through the airport or part of that travel to reduce time is the best. One other thing to add along those lines is airport security, right? Is a big deal, obviously, in the US. There are multiple different options now on how to fast track your airport security. The most popular one is TSA pre-check. So there are a couple of different ways to get TSA pre. If you are getting TSA pre and also you are doing few international travels a year, I highly recommend getting global entry instead of getting TSA pre. It's only like $25 more for 5 years, which is, I mean, ROI wise, like it's not even like a debate. And a lot of credit cards also have reimbursement programs for global entry. Um, so when you get global entry, you get TSA pre-check automatically. There are also now certain airports have clear, or certain airline terminals have clear. There's also clear plus TSA pre now. Like, so depending on how long the lines are, you can kind of use these. Also, obviously, if you have TSA pre-check, you don't have to take like your toiletries and your laptop and remove shoes when you go through the scanner. You still have to go through the scanner, right? But make sure that you're not stuck behind. Again, like no offense to like people who travel with like families. Try and use like a line that's moving faster, right? The last thing you want to get stuck behind is like someone who's trying to figure out how to collapse like a stroller in front of you, right? When you're traveling on a weekly basis, like you want to avoid things like that will stress you out. Again, like I wasn't trying to pick on like that specific scenario, but like be smart about it, right? Because sometimes like you have the option to use like multiple different scanner kind of lines. So kind of look at like who's in front of you and figure out like what's the best way to get through that.
Yeah, I think
Right.
um, most travel credit cards, not even premium, I think middling travel credit cards comes with the global entry reimbursement. But some travel credit cards, I think now most provide a priority pass. I want
Exactly.
to talk about that. So priority pass is a lounge partnership program these credit cards have that opens up so many lounges, in the US destination and international. So I think as part of the travel prep, Roshan, I would also think about what is the closest lounge I have in the gate that I'll be departing from and arriving. so I can plan to spend more time there and
Right.
relax as opposed to staying
Right.
in the at the gate with a lot of
So yeah, so with the lounges, like with domestic travel versus international travel has like a big difference when it comes to like lounge access through like airline programs, right? Unless you're at like that very top tier, you don't get lounge access even if you have like a second or third level type of like a tier for domestic travel. But if you are doing international travel from an alliance point of view, you do, right? So you had to kind of do some research to kind of figure out like what benefits to get. But like with Priority Pass, whether it's domestic or whatever, you'll get lounge access. If you are doing international travel, I mean, I love traveling through Doha. Whenever I fly to Sri Lanka, one of the reasons is like the lounge.
Can you explain what lounge access mean for? I think most knows, but some may
Right.
wonder.
So lounge is basically like an area like to relax where you have comfortable chairs, free food. One of the best things is like the food part, right? Like so
Is it
you
like
can
snacks or is it like a proper
it
meal?
it kind of depends. I mean, some of the lounges within US airports are a bit sad compared to some of the international lounges, right? If you're flying through some of the European countries, I mean, some of the Lufthansa lounges, British Airways lounges are like, in comparison are like better. Any of the three major Middle Eastern airports like Doha, Dubai, or Abu Dhabi, like those lounges, like you cannot even measure them. Even if you go far, it's like Singapore and some of the other countries. So international lounges are way better. So if you have like a long haul flight and if you have a couple of hours to kill as part of your transit, going to the lounge is the best. And some of these lounges also have like shower facilities, right? So if you really want to have a change of clothes or like, have like a real shower, you can. And not every lounge has these options. Also, when it comes to certain airports, there are different tiered lounges too. So, for example, like in Doha, there's a first class only Qatar lounge, right? You have to fly Qatar first class to access that, right? And same similar like to business class too. So for example, there are restrictions. It's kind of funny. I learned this recently. So if you get a free upgrade to a business class, like as a complimentary upgrade, you still cannot use the business class lounge, right? Because it's specifically dedicated for like paying customers. But also like the food part. I mean, like I personally don't like to have airline food. I one think like they are like horrible. And also like if it is like long haul, it actually adds to your jet lag, right? Because the more food you eat when you travel, like they don't digest until like you have landed, like and like once it starts to digest, like your body will use more energy, so you'll feel more tired if you eat a lot mid there. Roshan, like what questions do you have like when you travel?
So for me, I learned about these credit cards that we just use one for everything. And then the second thing I also learned today is you mentioned transferring points. So we generally, yeah, I guess we're lazy. So we use the travel portal from the bank itself. So I didn't know that you could travel, transfer points, and then book it from the airline itself. That is an interesting one. We also have this priority pass. I don't think we've really used it.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but I guess we don't travel that much. Plus, we travel. I think priority pass only gives plus one guest, and so if we travel as a family, that's four of us, so might not work.
It depends on banks too. Like VentureX, if you get a priority pass from VentureX, you can get unlimited guests with you in the same priority pass. So I think differs from, and Chase Sapphire, I think they give reimbursement too. Like if you go into a restaurant and not use the lounge, and you can get like certain amount of dollars off credited back to you in the bank account. So,
I was going to talk about like a little bit of like the rental car situation too, right? Like,
mm,
so I mean, rental car again, like similar to airlines and hotels, pretty much most of the known rental car companies have like their own rewards programs. They don't necessarily have alliances unless like they all fall under like the same ownership now, right? Also, like so even if so for example, like Avis and Budget fall under the same ownership, but you cannot use the number across like the two brands. Like you have to stick to like the rewards. So again, like any kind of like these types of loyalty programs are free to join, right? So just sign up, have a number, like maintain like that list so that like you are kind of using it consistently. And I think the one message we have been trying to convey is like stick to one brand as much as possible, right? Like when I travel, like I like if I have to rent a car, like I try to stick to Avis as much as possible because I get the maximum benefits because I'm consistently maintaining that status. So I get better rates. Upgrades are always great. So I typically book like a standard car, and I mean 95% of the time I get like a premium car for free, right? Roshan, you know this, like we have gotten so many upgrades when we have traveled together, right?
So let's talk about a scenario. Let's say you have a work travel coming for, let's say, 3 nights, 4 days, and you are set to use Hilton for some reason. That's your preferred hotel. Let's say you go out and get a vanilla credit card just before the travel. Let's say it's Amex Gold, for example. That comes with like $250 annual fee, and it comes with 100,000 points with it as a sign-up bonus. Let's go with that, right? So you basically use that to book the hotel and your airline. You travel there and come back. Now your points, let's say, I think 150, let's say. Now, if you transfer that just from that 3 night stay from the office travel, when you transfer 150,000 points to Hilton back again, you get 300,000 Hilton points because they have a 1 to 2 point conversion ratio. And now with the 300,000 points, you are set to book 4 nights and you get fifth night free in hotel because every time you book through points for 4 nights, you get the fifth night free. So now you have a whole week of stay in a luxury hotel, let's say Conrad or Waldorf Astoria of your choice within domestic. And I think there are plenty of international too. If you can stomach a
Yeah.
travel air ticket, that will be totally free reward from the work travel. And when you walk into that, because you have a credit card, you might already have a gold status with Hilton because it comes with the gold status, and you get a free upgrade on top of it. So now you're staying in $1,000 a night hotel for 5 nights, paid by the credit card as well as the three night stay.
That's a great scenario. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, also, sometimes I have used, if my airline points are not sufficient for the whole return journey, sometimes I have booked one way on points and one way out of pocket, right? Like for personal
Mm.
travel, obviously. That also you have to kind of figure out like what's the best. So, for example, port taxes are very high in Europe compared to US, right? So let's say I'm flying to London from US. If I use my points for US to UK leg, my taxes are like $5, $6 kind of a thing. For the same return, if I book it the other way, UK to US, my taxes might come to about $200, right? Because taxes you had to pay out of pocket, even when you use points for like airlines. So you had to kind of figure out like what's the best way to kind of do this while you're using it for your benefit, right? Again, like a kind of like a hack.
Is, is there some sort of cheat sheet that
It's all in the head.
you want to talk about some nightmares, travel nightmares?
Definitely have a few stories. Flight cancellations are like unavoidable. If you're traveling frequently, like the more you run into these scenarios are higher. I have run into it a ton of times. My advice and like a personal request is like do not get mad at the gate agent because they have no control over this. You would have seen like a ton of social media videos around these types of things. If your flight is canceled, if you have status, it's relatively easier to get it rebooked on a different flight. So one of the things I have done is depending on like your leg too, like so sometimes you can walk up to the gate and ask them to like put you on standby. But sometimes it is easier to call like the customer support and get them to like do this, like kind of like rebooking type of like a situation, especially if it is like canceled, right? So this is where like one of the other times like where like the status kind of comes into picture. Then you get like priority access to like customer support. Sometimes there are like dedicated lines where like it's not like a 1 hour wait kind of a thing, right? Especially if there's a cancellation, there'll be like half of the flight would be like at the gate agent, like trying to figure out like what's your next move. So it's just always easier to just call like the customer support instead of like trying to get it done at the gate. And in some situations, you have to talk to someone at the gate, right? The more patient you are, like it's easier to come out of that situation is like what I've experienced, because you getting mad, you getting frustrated is absolutely not going to change anything or help with the situation at all, right? They are not going to fast track like a flight just because you're mad, right? So try to stay calm and like try to figure out like what's the next best course of action, like depending on like your situation.
This is
Um,
another benefit of traveling just with hand luggage too, though. But if you had check-in, I guess could you still change your flight?
no, so with when you have checked bags, it is very difficult to do it. I have done it a couple of times, but it is not easy. Like in most cases, they will say no.
Hmm.
It depends on like how nice the gate agent or whoever the agent you talk to. Yeah, once I was traveling back, I can't remember from where. Like I had a long layover, but I have already like traveled for like so long, so I kind of went and asked like, hey, can I change my flight to like an earlier flight for the domestic leg? And they were nice enough to like go and like even find my bag and change the baggage tag. But like yeah, like those kinds of things, it's easier like if you do like just carry on.
Hmm.
Other nightmare stories, I mean, like things like these are really not hacks, but sometimes it's inevitable. Like you you might get stuck in a middle seat just because that's the only option you had, and like the two people who are next to you are like not the most I don't know, like concerning, or like sometimes like people just like stretch their arms. Or one thing I absolutely hate is like when people wear like puffer jackets in the flight, like while they're seated. It's just like ridiculous. I mean, like if you're cold, like there are other ways to like cover yourself. Like do not wear puffer jackets while you're seated. Like it's just like not a good situation for like whoever is seated next to you. I have had situations where like you get stuck next to like someone who stinks. I mean, what are you going to do, right? Like, but the worst thing is like if you're stuck next to a person like that on a long haul flight, right? The last thing you want is like someone like that, like sitting next to you on a 14-hour flight. But again, like no hack around it, just have to weather it. Or like if there are other seats available, you can always ask the flight crew to like, get you like a different seat politely, kind of a thing.
Yuresh, I think you covered like all of my nightmare stories in one fell swoop.
I already mentioned getting stuck in a middle seat scenario too. Once I was on a flight to Australia. I think the LA Melbourne flight is what I think, Roshan, you have taken that, right? 15 and a half or something. So I missed my flight, and these are once a day type of flights because of a delay like of my connecting flight. So I got rebooked on the next day, and I got a middle coach seat on a 15-hour flight. So
Gosh.
that was a bit of a nightmare. The one good thing is, I'll tell you, like I can sleep on flights. Like I don't need anything to help me sleep. Like sometimes I board, like I sit down, put my seat belt on, put my noise cancellation headphones on, and I don't even know like taking off sometimes. Sometimes in when during work travel especially. So I used to do the consulting Monday through th Thursday. Thursday, sometimes I sit down and fall asleep. I only wake up on touchdown when it bounces. Like it's like I can sleep well. I know like some people like use I don't know, like medication sometimes, or like some people drink. I never drink when I fly. Like it dehydrates you like crazy. So you had to kind of figure out like what works for you. Obviously, that's another hack. In addition to like me trying to avoid like eating in flights, like
Roshan,
I've had
nightmare situations.
middle seats in my time. Delays, like what you said, taxiing and not going anywhere. And I hate when they turn off the AC or right this air circulation. That's very difficult. Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like one thing I started doing recently is use Apple AirTags on my bags.
That's
especially when you're checking in bags. I had a flight change, and like then they had to send it like the following day. So it's kind of like a peace of mind,
mm,
and the AirTags kind of work on like the Apple infrastructure, right? Like so, it works for the most part. So that's kind of like a nice thing I discovered that I'm using now.
that's a good one. Shall we wrap it up there? It's a really very educational podcast for me. Thank you for sharing.
No problem.
So, yeah, we started with the high level introduction about what we are trying to do with work travel, how to ethically benefit from work travel so that we can save up for personal travel. And we went down the path of explaining what loyalty programs are out there, hotel, airlines, and even rental cars. And we talked about some of the hacks when it comes to booking places and how to reward some of the points or transfer them to maximize the reward for the collected points. We touched a little bit about credit cards, and at the end, we shared some nightmare stories. We'll see you in our next episode. Bye bye.
All right, thank you.